Okay, here is how to choose the best articles for your literature review, the most credible sources using Google Scholar. When students first begin writing a literature review, one of the biggest mistakes they make happen long before they write a single sentence. And this is all about the sources that they choose. Because let's be honest, Google Scholar can feel like both a blessing and a curse. You type in your topic and suddenly thousands of articles appear, page after page, titles that sound relevant. And many people assume that if something appears in Google Scholar, it is automatically credible enough to use. But that is not how it works. Google Scholar is a search engine on its own, not a quality filter. It helps you find academic material, yes, but it does not decide for you which sources are strong, current, reliable, or even appropriate for your literature review. The judgment is where you come in, so that judgment is your responsibility. And this is where strong literature reviews are separated from weak ones, because a literature review is only as good as the quality of the evidence behind it. If your sources are weak, outdated, irrelevant, or unreliable, then even a beautifully written paragraph become academically fragile. So the question here is, how do I know which sources are actually worth trusting and using? The question is not how do I find articles on Google Scholar, because almost everybody can do that. Knowing the answer to this makes the difference between random reading and scholarly research. So the first thing to understand is that not every article deserves equal trust. Some are peer-reviewed, carefully researched, and published in respected journals, and others may just be conference papers and published drafts, low-quality publications, or studies from journals with weak standards, or even theses from other students. And unless you know how to evaluate these sources, they can all look equally legitimate on the surface. And that is why students need a filtering mindset. When you search Google Scholar, your job is not to collect as many articles as possible. Your job is to identify the strongest voices in the academic conversations around your topic. So think of yourself as a collector, but you are also curating at this point. You are selecting evidence and not gathering garbage. So yeah, let's get straight into it. How do you identify strong sources? The first clue is the journal itself. Always look at where the article is published. Always look at where the article is published. The journal will tell you if the article is a good source or not. A credible article usually appears in recognized academic journal, not just any random website or news channel that nobody knows. For example, if you find an article published in journals like Elsevier, Taylor and Francis, the Journal of Educational Research, Nature, The Lancet, or other established peer-reviewed journals, that is often a strong sign of credibility. But if the journal name sounds suspiciously vague, unfamiliar, or something like some global, international, universal, something of those sorts, and it doesn't even have a clear reputation, you need to be cautious. Some journals do exist mainly to publish papers quickly for profit with little real academic critiques. This is why journal reputation also matters. And also, if you are unsure about a journal, search its name separately. Check whether it is indexed in respected academic databases. Look for the publisher information. See if it belongs to institutions like Elsevier, Springer, Wiley, Taylor and Francis, Sage, or reputable university presses. So journals can be under Taylor and Francis, Elsevier. These institutions usually cover these reputable journals. Then second, check the publication dates. And this is really important in fields where knowledge changes rapidly, like technology, medicine, education policy, artificial intelligence, social media research, and many others. So if you're writing about, let's say, online learning in 2026, but most of your sources are from 2012, your review may be already outdated. And that does not mean that older studies are useless. No. When you are doing a historical study or a foundational study and building on certain things, you need to include older studies. But your literature review should always reflect the current evidence. So you most of the time need a good balance, which includes both older landmark studies for theoretical grounding and then recent studies for current relevance. And as a general rule, many supervisors or institutions expect a strong percentage of your sources to come from the last 5 years. And some go even as far as 10 years, but it's usually the last 5 years. And Google Scholar has filters that allow you to do that. So you could type in 2020 or 2021. You could type in 2021 to 2026 and still search, and you get the relevant articles which have been published in the recent time. Then third clue is to pay attention to the citation citation count and also understand it wisely. On Google Scholar, you always see the number of people that cited a particular paper. For example, you could see cited by 12, cited by 4. You could see a lot of citations there. This tells you how many researchers have referenced that particular work. A highly cited paper is often influential and respected. But, citation count alone does not equal quality, because older papers that have stayed in databases and journals for long, usually accumulate more citations simply because they have existed longer. And also, sometimes newer excellent studies have low citations because they were published recently. So use citation count as one of the signals, but not the only signal. A paper cited 1,000 times deserves more attention, right? But a recent paper cited only 5 times may still be highly valuable if it is new and relevant. Then 4, this is where many students make poor choices. Read beyond the title. Read beyond the title. So if you see a title that sounds relevant, don't just go and immediately download the article, because sometimes titles can be misleading. So you have to also click in there and then read the abstract. Click in there and read the abstract first. The abstract tells you what the study examined, how it was conducted, and what findings emerged from that study. So once you're able to go through the abstract, you can either determine whether that study is good for your review or not. So this just helps you quickly judge whether the article truly fits your research question, right? And relevance, because relevance is just as important as credibility. A highly credible article that does not match your research focus may still be the wrong source for your literature review. Then the 5th clue, examine the authors. Who wrote the article? You have to look at who wrote the article. Are they researchers affiliated with universities or respected institutions? The authors matter a lot, because experienced scholars in the field often build reputations through repeated contributions. So if you notice certain authors appearing repeatedly in your topic area, that is often a sign that they are important voices in that field. And this helps you identify authoritative authors, authoritative people in your field. For example, if you are researching qualitative research methods and you keep seeing the same respected methodology scholars, the same authors cited repeatedly, that is a meaningful thing, because that is credibility, and credibility often lives in scholarly reputation. Then number 6, be careful with theses, dissertations, or unpublished papers. Google Scholar often includes master's theses, PhD dissertations, preprints, conference drafts. These can be useful, but they are not always peer-reviewed in the same way journal articles are. And again, when I say peer-reviewed, it means a work that is published but has also been approved or critiqued by other experts who has gone through the same work. So usually when it comes to thesis and all that, it is not so. It is not peer-reviewed in the same way journal articles have undergone this peer review process in depth. And I'm not saying that makes them worthless. Sometimes dissertations contain rich data and valuable insight, but for your literature review, peer-reviewed journal articles should usually form the backbone of your evidence. Use unpublished materials only selectively, and probably if you also have permission from your supervisor, you could explain why you want to use that. But usually there is an alternative for that data source that is unpublished that you want to use. So use them selectively and not excessively. Now let's talk about one of the smartest ways to find strong sources on Google Scholar. Follow the citation trails. This is really a powerful technique that some people just overlook. When you find an excellent article, do not stop there. Do not stop there. You can look at the sources that article has cited, and you can also look at the newer studies that cited that article. So you find a study and you like the study, you just click the people who cite that article to look at the particular studies that have been done in that lane. And looking at the newer articles that have cited that particular article is going to give you more current information or similar studies that are in the same lane that you can also use to improve your literature review. And this creates a network of connected scholarship, right? Or you can simply just enter your article. You can simply enter the article that you are trying to use for your study or you are using for your study and go to their reference. Then you go through that reference and see if there are other good articles that you can also use for your study. That is it. It's like you are entering the academic family tree of your topic. You are seeing all the interrelated, interconnected connected articles. So instead of searching blindly, you move through proven networks that these other articles that you have chosen, these other quality articles that you have selected are connected to. So this is one way that experienced researchers find quality literature faster. And another important issue is also avoiding source overload. Avoiding source overload. Students often believe that more sources equals better literature review. No, that is definitely not true. 30 carefully selected strong sources are far better than 100 weak, repetitive, irrelevant ones. A literature review is not a numbers competition. It is not a numbers competition. The strength of a literature review comes from the relevance, the credibility, and the analytical connection in these quality sources that you are using. So that is one particular thing. And also another critical point is that never rely on only one type of source. A balanced literature review should not focus on only one type of source or studies. It should include maybe empirical studies, review articles, theoretical papers, seminal works, and even recent current studies. This creates depth. If all your sources say the same thing in the same way, then your review becomes very shallow. So strong literature reviews reflect the scholarly conversation, not just academic echoes, right? So let's look at, let's say, a practical example. Let's imagine that your topic is the impact of social media on academic performance among university students. A weak approach is just to download the first 10 articles that appear, but a better and stronger approach is to search carefully, filter by recent years, check the journal quality, read the abstracts, and compare relevance. And then you also prioritize peer review studies. You can also trace the citations from those strong papers. That is a better approach to your literature search. And also remember that choosing sources for literature review is not all about finding information. It's all about building trust, because every article you include tells whoever is going to read your literature review that this is the evidence that I believe deserves a place in my argument. And that is an intellectual responsibility. That is your responsibility. So your literature review is not strengthened by how much you read. It is strengthened by how wisely you choose. Yeah. So next time you open Google Scholar, remember this. Do not treat every search result as equal. Search broadly, but filter carefully. And then you evaluate critically before choosing intentionally, because the best literature reviews are not built by students who gather the most sources. They are built by students and people who know how to recognize the best ones. So that is all I have to talk about today. I hope this gives you something to think on and also practice. All the best.